Welcome to English 12. This recording is to be used with English 12 book. Written by Hoàng Văn Vân, Hoàng Thị Xuân Hoa, Vũ Thị Lôi, Đào Nóc Lấp, Đỗ Thuần Minh, Nguyễn Quốc Thuần. Read and recorded by Tyler Watts, Kathy Taylor, Kaylin Hardy, and Alexander Kennedy. Unit 1, Home Life. Part A, Reading, page 12. I come from a family of 5 people. My parents, my 2 younger brothers, and I. My mother works as a nurse in a big hospital. She has to work long hours, and once a week, she has to work on a night shift. My father is a biologist. He works from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in a lab. But sometimes, when there is a project, he doesn't come home until very late at night. Although my parents are very busy at work, they try to spend as much time with their children as possible. It is generally believed that men build the house and women make it home. But in my family, both parents join hands to give us a nice house and a happy home. My mother is a very caring woman. She takes the responsibility for running the household. She is always the first one to get up in the morning to make sure that we leave home for school, having eaten breakfast and dressed in suitable clothes. In the afternoon, after hospital, she rushes to the market, then hurries home so that dinner is ready on the table by the time Dad gets home. Dad is always willing to give a hand with cleaning the house. Unlike most men, he enjoys cooking. Sometimes, at weekends, he cooks us some special dishes. His eel soup is the best soup I have ever eaten. I am now in my final year at the secondary school, and in my attempt to win a place at university, I am under a lot of study pressure. However, being the eldest child and the only daughter in the family, I try to help with the household chores. My main responsibility is to wash the dishes and take out the garbage. I also look after the boys, who are quite active and mischievous sometimes. But most of the time, they are obedient and hardworking. They love joining my father in mending things around the house at weekends. We are a very close-knit family and very supportive of one another. We often share our feelings, and whenever problems come up, we discuss them frankly and find solutions quickly. We always feel safe and secure in our family. It is a base from which we can go into the world with confidence. Listening, page 16. Listen and repeat. Flight. Reserved. Coach. Rarely. Close-knit. Spread out. Leftovers. Task crowded. Listen to the conversation between Paul and Andrea and decide whether the statements are true or false. Andrea, you're going home for the holiday?
I am. I've booked a flight for tomorrow afternoon and I can't wait.
That sounds great.
What about you? going home to?
I haven't decided yet. I'm still considering.
Haven't decided yet? Oh, you are never going to get a flight out of here. All the seats have been reserved by now, I'm sure. It's the holiday season, after all.
Well, it's not very important to me. My family lives about 180 kilometers from here. I usually take the train or the coach.
You don't sound excited about it.
Well, we are not really a very close-knit family. I have 3 brothers, and they've spread out all over the place. We rarely get together as a family anymore.
Well, I try to get home as soon as possible. We're a big family. There are 6 of us, children, so it's always a lot of fun.
6 kids?
Yes, and we're all really close. My brothers are married, so it makes for a very crowded home over the holidays. And there are too many people to cook for, so we end up going out to dinner a lot. That's also fun.
Well, at my home, my mother loves to cook. So when we get home, she often cooks big meals. We have leftovers for days. 2. Listen again and note down 2 things that are different about Paul's and Andrea's families. Language focus. Page 18. Pronunciation. Listen and repeat.
Bats, bags. Kits, kids. Speaks, speeds. Dates, days. Photographs,
Practice
halves.
reading these sentences.
I saw some bats flying from the bags. He often speaks at different speeds. She tore the photographs into halves. I always have dates on rainy days. The kids are playing with their toy kits.
Unit 2. Cultural Diversity. Part A. Reading. Page 20.
Traditionally, Americans and Asians have very different ideas about love and marriage. Americans believe in romantic marriage. A boy and a girl are attracted to each other, fall in love, and decide to marry each other. Asians, on the other hand, believe in contractual marriage. The parents of the bride and the groom decide on the marriage. And love, if it ever develops, is supposed to follow marriage, not precede it. To show the differences, a survey was conducted among American, Chinese, and Indian students to determine their attitudes towards love and marriage. Below is a summary of each group's responses to the 4 key values. Physical attractiveness. The Americans are much more concerned than the Indians and the Chinese with physical attractiveness when choosing a wife or a husband. They also agree that a wife should maintain her beauty and appearance after marriage. Confiding. Few Asian students agree with the American students' view that wives and husbands share all thoughts. In fact, a majority of Indians and Chinese think it is better and wiser for a couple not to share certain thoughts. A large number of Indian men agree that it is unwise to confide in their wives. Partnership of equals. The majority of Asian students reject the American view that marriage is a partnership of equals. Many Indian students agree that a woman has to sacrifice more in a marriage than a man. Trust built on love. Significantly, more Asian students than American students agree that a husband is obliged to tell his wife where he has been if he comes home late. The Asian wife can demand a record of her husband's activities. The American wife, however, trusts her husband to do the right thing because he loves her, not because he has to. The comparison of the four values suggests that young Asians are not as romantic as their American counterparts.
Part C. Listening. Page 24. Listen and repeat.
Altar, master of ceremony, banquet, groom, bride, ancestor, tray, schedule,
Task
blessing.
1. Listen to the passage and fill in the missing
Wedding
information. In Vietnam.
Can you tell me something about wedding ceremonies in Vietnam?
Well, weddings are very important to the Vietnamese, not only to the couple involved, but also for both families. The wedding day is usually chosen carefully by the groom's parents.
What does the groom's family usually do on the wedding day?
On the wedding day, the groom's family and relatives go to the bride's house, bringing gifts wrapped in red paper. The people who hold the trays of gifts are also carefully chosen.
Do you have someone in charge of the ceremony? And what does he do during the wedding ceremony?
Yes, we have a master of ceremonies who introduces the groom, the bride, the parents, the relatives, and guests of the two families. The wedding ceremony starts in front of the altar. The bride and the groom would pray, asking their ancestors' permission to get married. The master of ceremonies gives the wedding couple advice on starting a new family. The groom and the bride then exchange their wedding rings.
Where is the wedding banquet held?
Well, it depends. Often the wedding banquet is held at the groom and bride's home, or at a hotel or a restaurant, and all close relatives, friends, and neighbors are invited.
What kind of food and drinks are served?
Traditional food and beer or wine are served. During the reception, the groom, bride, and their parents stop by each table to thank their guests. The guests, in return, will give envelopes containing wedding cards and money to the newly wedded couples, along with their blessing.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Task
You're welcome.
2. Listen again and answer
E.
the questions. Language focus. Page 27. Pronunciation. Listen and repeat.
Walked, knocked, jumped, helped, missed. Explained, phoned, rained, arrived, involved. Wanted, arrested, started, mended, decided.
Practice reading these sentences.
1. She walked to the window and looked outside. 2. The driver stopped his car at the crossing where a woman was knocked down. 3. Jane phoned for an ambulance and the police, but they arrived late. 4. The police arrested the thief yesterday. 5. He decided to give up smoking.
Unit 3. Ways of socializing. Part A. Reading. page 30. To attract someone's attention so that we might speak to that person, we can use either verbal or nonverbal forms of communication. Let us look at nonverbal communication in English. Probably the most common way of attracting someone's attention is by waving. For example, if we are at a noisy party and see a friend come in the door, about 20 meters away, we might raise our hand and wave to her as a signal that we see her. But how hard can we wave in a situation like this? Suppose you are at the airport and you see your brother get off the plane and begin walking toward you. If you are excited, you might jump up and down and wave as hard as you can to attract his attention. This is the instance where big, obvious nonverbal signals are appropriate. There are, however, some social situations where smaller, nonverbal signals are more appropriate. In a restaurant, for example, if we want to attract the attention of our waiter, we have several choices. We can wait until he passes near us, catch his eye, and nod slightly to let him know we would like him to come to our table. Or we can raise our hand slightly to show that we need assistance. We do not whistle or clap our hands to get the person's attention. This is considered impolite and even rude. In most social situations, where some informality is allowed, a brief raise of the hand and a small wave is fine. For instance, if you are walking across the schoolyard and see your teacher approaching you, a small friendly wave to attract his or her attention is appropriate. Once you've got your friend's attention, you shouldn't point at that person or thing you want her to look at. A slight nod will do. Pointing at someone is usually considered rude. Of course, there are times when pointing is perfectly acceptable, such as when a teacher wants to get someone's attention in class. The teacher often points to the student and says, "David, would you read the next sentence, please?" Pointing here is not impolite. It's simply a way to get someone's attention. Part C. Listening. Page 34. Listen and repeat.
Marvelous. Arguments. Regulations. Absolute. Maximum. Object. Installed. Chit-chat.
Task 1.
Startling.
Linda Couple, a social worker, advises young people on how to use the telephone in their family. Listen to her talk and decide whether the statements are true or false.
The telephone. Potential family battleground. Hello, everyone. In today's talk, I'm going to give you some pieces of advice on how to use the telephone in the most decent way so as to avoid unnecessary disagreements between you and members of your family. The telephone, as you know, is a marvelous instrument, but it may cause arguments between you and your parents. Arguments that could be easily avoided if you would sit down, talk it over, and agree to a few simple regulations. The most obvious problem, of course, is what everyone considers a reasonable length of time for a call. The exact duration must be worked out with your parents, but 10 minutes should be an absolute maximum. That's certainly long enough to say almost anything in 5 different ways. And yet, it isn't so long that other members of the family will become angry. Even when your parents are out, the length of your call should be limited, because they, or someone else, may be trying to reach your home for a very important reason. Calling hours should be agreed upon. If your parents object to your leaving the dinner table to take calls, tell your friends to avoid calling at that hour. If someone does phone, ask him to call back, or offer to call him when dinner's over. A serious calling problem is calling very late at night or very early in the morning. This particular mistake is made mostly by young people who consider 10 or 11 p.m., when a lot of tired adults are happily sleeping, the shank of the evening. So please tell your friends not to call after 10 o'clock. The shock of waking out of a sound sleep and the fright of that instant thought, "There's an accident," are enough to give your parents a heart attack. Weekend morning calls aren't so startling, but it's the one time your parents can sleep late. If your mother and father, out of kindness, have installed a separate phone for you, remember that you're still a member of the family, so try to stick to your family's regulations. That's all for my talk today. Thank you for listening.
Task 2. Listen to part of Miss Linda Couples' talk again and write the missing words.
Calling hours should be agreed upon. If your parents object to your leaving the dinner table to take calls, tell your friends to avoid calling at that hour. If someone does phone, ask him to call back, or offer to call him when dinner's over. A serious calling problem is calling very late at night or very early in the morning. This particular mistake is made mostly by young people who consider 10 or 11 p.m., when a lot of tired adults are happily sleeping, the shank of the evening. So please tell your friends not to call after 10 o'clock. The shock of waking out of a sound sleep and the fright of that instant thought, "There's an accident," are enough to give your parents a heart attack. Weekend morning calls aren't so startling, but it's the one time your parents can sleep late. If your mother and father, out of kindness, have installed a separate phone for you, remember that you're still a member of the family, so try to stick to your family's
Part E.
regulations.
Language focus. Page 38. Pronunciation. Listen and repeat.
Attract, discuss, suppose. Waving, walking, pointing. Signal, instance, student. Polite, police, between.
Practice reading these sentences.
Linda Couple is a social worker in my village. William Makepeace Thackeray was a famous British writer. David Warren is Linda's teacher's doctor. Janet is having a number of problems. Michael is sailing across the river. Jenny is waiting for Michael to return.
Test yourself A. Page 41. Listening. Listen to the passage about the changes in families in Western countries during the last 2 centuries and decide if the following statements are true or false. Families in the Western world have changed greatly during the last 2 centuries. Social scientists say that this change in the family is one of the important changes from a traditional society to a modern society. Before the 19th century, families usually arranged marriages for their children. Young people did not decide who they wanted to marry. After they got married, they usually had a lot of children. In the 19th century, most young people could not choose the person they wanted to marry. A marriage joined 2 people and not 2 families. 2 people could get married because they loved each other, not just because their families wanted them to marry. At the same time, parents began to realize that they had to take very good care of their children. Before this, most people did not go to school. The family members all worked together at home. Later, people realized that education was necessary for a good life. Today, many parents think that they should have fewer children so they can give each one a good life. They think it is important for a mother and a father to spend as much time as possible with their children. They think parents should take care of their health and try to give them an education. Home is seen as a safe, warm place for all the family members. Unit 4, School Education System. Part A, Reading, page 44.
Schooling is compulsory for all English children from the age of 5 to 16. The academic year in England runs from September to July and is divided into 3 terms. Autumn term is from the beginning of September to mid-December. Spring term is from the beginning of January to mid-March, and summer term from early April to mid-July. Each term is separated by a 1-week break called half-term, usually at the end of October, mid-February, and the end of May. There are 2 parallel school systems in England. The first is the state school system, which is free for all students and paid for by the state. The second category is the independent or public school system, which is fee-paying. The state school system, which educates 93% of the pupils in England, can be divided into 2 levels of education: primary education and secondary education. See the table below for more information about the school education system in England. The national curriculum is set by the government and must be followed in all state schools. It is made up of the following subjects: English, Design and Technology, Geography, Maths, Information Technology, Music, Science, Arts, Physical Education, History, and a modern foreign language. English, Maths, and Science are core subjects which are compulsory in the national examinations at certain stages of the school education system.
Part C, Listening, page 48. Listen and repeat.
Tearaway, disruptive, methodical, actually, well-behaved,
Task
struggle.
1. Listen to the conversation between Jenny and Gavin. Put a tick to the question to which the answer is.
These are questions about how you got on at school. Shall we just go through them?
Yes, let's.
Okay. So, did you always work very hard?
Well, I certainly worked pretty hard at the subjects I enjoyed. So yes, I did. What about you?
Yes, I did actually. I think I worked very hard. Yeah. Now, let's come to the next question.
Did you always listen carefully to your teachers?
No, I don't think I did. No, I think I was quite disruptive, actually. What about you?
Well, I think I did listen to the teachers, certainly, when I got to the level where I was doing the subjects that I enjoyed.
Yeah, okay. The next question is, did you always behave well?
I don't think I always behaved well. I was a bit of a tearaway.
Well, I think I was pretty well behaved on the whole. So I'd say yes, yeah.
Good for you. Did you pass your exams easily?
No, I can't say that I did, no. I found them quite a struggle, actually. What about you?
I didn't pass them that easily. Though I worked hard, I found it very difficult to answer all the long questions in a short time.
Yeah, exactly. What about this one, then? Did you always write slowly and carefully?
Quite slowly. Essays took a long time to write, and I suppose I took a bit of care. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I was very careful, and, yeah, I was quite methodical.
And did you think your school days were the best days of your life?
No, I can't say that they were. What about you?
No. I went away to boarding school when I was quite young, and I didn't like that. No, they weren't the best days of my life. Task 2. Listen again and answer the questions. Part E. Language focus. Page 49. Pronunciation. Listen and repeat.
Algebra, chemistry, computing, carefully, academic, cinema, politics, primary, compulsory, physical, statistics,
Practice
September.
reading these sentences.
The academic school year generally commences in September. The typical school day normally finishes at 3 p.m. in England. The national curriculum is usually set by the government. The GCSE stands for the General Certificate of Secondary Education. English, maths, and science are compulsory in the national examination at certain stages of the school education system.
Unit 5. Higher Education. Part A. Reading. Page 52. 3 students talk about their first impressions of university life. Read the passages and then do the tasks that follow. Sarah.
On the first weekend, I went out with my new friends, walking around the campus. It was exciting, thinking how I was at college, meeting people who could become good friends of mine. The most exciting thing was that I didn't have to explain to my parents where I was going, who with, or what time I'd be home. On Saturday night, I followed my roommate to a party. The people at the party were busy playing some game, and no one seemed to notice my existence. I suddenly felt so lonely. Fighting back tears, I ran back to my room, thinking I would never feel at home at college.
Ellen.
My roommate left the window open all the time, even when it was 10 degrees Celsius out, and went to bed at 10 every night. When she got sick after midterms, she blamed my typing and having a light on while she was trying to sleep. At first, college was a little daunting. I graduated from a small school. After seeing the same people over and over for many years, it was amazing, but a little scary, to be in a place where it seemed like I never saw the same person twice.
Brendan. The first year at college was probably the best and most challenging year of my life. Academically, I enjoyed it thoroughly. Taking part in the advanced engineering project gave me a chance to use my creativity and knowledge to help society. Socially, I made lots of new friends, both through engineering and living at St. John's College on campus. The social calendar of the colleges provides plenty of opportunities to meet non-engineering students as well as other engineers, many of whom have become my best mates. Part C, Listening, page 56. Listen and repeat.
Proportion, majority, tutorial, international, available, appointment, agricultural, rural.
Listen
thoroughly.
to the conversation between John and David and circle the option A, B, C, or D to complete the following sentences.
Now, David, can I get this right? You've just completed a MSc course on which a large proportion of the students were international students. Is that right?
That's it. Yes, I was in AERD. That's the Department of Agricultural Extension and Rural Development.
And how do you think the students from other countries got along on that course?
Pretty well.
What advice would you give to students, particularly international students, based on your experience as a student here?
I think the most basic thing is to make full use of the tutors and lecturers. Maybe some of the overseas students are a bit too shy to take questions or problems to tutors.
What do you think they should do?
I think they should find out at the beginning of the course the times at which the tutor is going to be available for tutorial appointments, and then make full use of them.
So, any problem they should tell the tutor as soon as possible? Let's move on. What about the amount of reading that you have to do as a university student?
Yes, it looks pretty daunting at first, with those long reading lists. Don't think that the students have to read everything that's listed. Try to find out which are the most important items on the list. Ask the lecturer or tutor, if necessary. And then, if your time is limited, spend it reading those books thoroughly.
Okay, that's very helpful, David. Thank you very much.
No, not at all. Part E, Language Focus, page 58. Pronunciation. Listen and repeat.
Economics, psychology, philosophy, engineering, sociology, mathematics, geographical, archaeology.
Practice reading these sentences.
Sociolinguistics is his favorite subject at the university. English language proficiency requirements for undergraduate courses such as engineering and mathematics are considerably demanding. Some geographical names in Australia are very difficult to remember. The entrance examination to universities in Vietnam always takes place in July. Mathematics, geography, and economics are his favorite subjects at Hanoi National University.
Unit 6. Future Jobs. Part A. Reading. Page 62.
Preparing for a job interview can be stressful, particularly when you are called for the first interview. Below are some pieces of advice that can help you reduce the feeling of pressure and create a good impression on your interviewer. Before the interview, you should find out as much as possible about the job and the vacancy. Before the interview, you have to send a letter of application and your resumes to the company to express your interest in the job and to show that you might be the most suitable candidate for the position. When you come to the interview, remember to bring with you your school certificates and letters of recommendation from your teachers or your previous employers. In addition, you may jot down your qualifications and experience that can relate to the job and prepare for the questions that are often asked during the interview. Make sure you know where the interview is and how to get there. Be on time or a few minutes early. Don't forget to dress neatly and formally. During the interview, you should concentrate on what the interviewer is saying and make a real effort to answer all the questions the interviewer asks. Be clear, polite, and honest. If you do not know something about the more technical aspects of the job, admit it and stress that you are willing to learn. Show enthusiasm when the job is explained to you. Always show your best side, your keenness to work, and your sense of responsibility. Don't forget to say goodbye to the interviewer before leaving the office. After the interview, if you are offered the position, congratulations. If you do not get the job, try not to be too disappointed. Think about the interviewer's comments because they may help you prepare better when you are called for the next job interview. Good luck.
Part C. Listening. Page 67. Listen and repeat.
Workforce, manufacturing, retail, service, economy, wholesale, category, goods, job
Task
market.
1. Listen to the passage and fill in the missing words in the boxes.
Let's look at some recent changes in the U.S. job market and see if we can make some predictions about future jobs. A good way to begin is to look at the American workforce and how it is changing. The most important change has been the shift from manufacturing jobs to service jobs. Manufacturing jobs are jobs in which people make something or produce things. For example, people produce cars. Service jobs are those in which workers provide services, or we may say they may do something like washing people's cars. Generally, service jobs are grouped into 5 categories. 1. Transportation companies. 2. Wholesale companies. 3. Retail companies. 4. Finance companies. 5. Personal services, such as hotels, car repairs, accounting, education, and medicine. Now the point here is that people have changed from manufacturing jobs to service jobs. For example, 100 years ago, 80% of workers produced goods. Today, only 30% do. Economists predict that by the year 2020, 9 out of every 10 workers will work in service jobs.
Task 2. Listen again and decide whether the statements are true or false. Language focus. Page 69. Pronunciation. Listen and repeat.
And, but, at, for, of, to, from.
Practice reading these sentences.
1. What are you looking at? 2. I want to go, but I don't know when. 3. She bought a book and 2 pens. 4. Thanks for coming. 5. Where is it from? 6. I'm from Hanoi. 7. She's the one I'm fond of. 8. First of all, I want to thank you for coming. 9. The letter was to him, not from him. 10. I want to ask you a question.
Test yourself B. Page 72. Listening. Listen to the passage about children's education and complete the following sentences.
Children's education is changing very rapidly today. In the past, teachers made children sit still for hours. They made them memorize all sorts of things. Today, many teachers wonder if it is possible to make children learn at all. They say they can only help them to discover things for themselves. For some children, school is a kind of prison. They are at school only because their parents make them go. They get out of the classroom as soon as the teachers let them leave. Many of them want to find jobs, but the law does not let them work until they reach a certain age. And so, they have to stay in school. Often they all hate every moment.
Unit 7. Economic Reforms. Part A. Reading. Page 74.
One of the most important measures to be taken to promote the development of a country is to constantly carry out economic reforms. Being aware of this, in December 1986, at its 6th National Conference, the Vietnamese Communist Party initiated an overall economic reform, commonly known as Doi Moi, renovation. The aim of Doi Moi was to restructure the economy of Vietnam and to raise the living standards of the people. Before Doi Moi, our country experienced a lot of difficulties. The economy was underdeveloped and was dominated by traditional agriculture. The country was poor, and people led a poor life. Production was stagnant. There was a shortage of schools and hospitals, and inflation could be seen in every sector of the economy. To solve these problems, our government introduced a number of renovation measures. They eliminated government subsidies. They shifted economic priority from heavy industry to three major economic programs, namely production of food, production of consumer goods, and production of exports. They reduced state intervention in business. They opened trade relations with all countries in the world and encouraged foreign and domestic private investment. The subsequent national congresses of the Vietnamese Communist Party, held in 1991, 1996, and 2001, continued to reaffirm its commitment to Doi Moi and called for more administrative and economic reforms. Under the party's guidelines, the government adopted the Land Law in 1993 and the Enterprises Law in 2000. These have laid legal grounds for dissolving inefficient cooperatives, expanding more opportunities for farmers, and encouraging both domestic and foreign private investment. Since Doi Moi, our country has undergone substantial changes. Productivity and agricultural exports have constantly increased. The farmers have enjoyed land use rights and have had a greater choice on how to use their agricultural land. The workers have worked harder as their time is their money, and the children, particularly those from ethnic minorities, have had more opportunities to enjoy education and training. We believe that with the strong commitment of our party and government to Doi Moi, we will gain greater achievements and build a better life for our people.
Unit 8. Life in the Future. Part A. Reading. Page 84.
What will life be like in the future? Different people have different answers to this question. Some are pessimistic, while others are optimistic. Things will be much worse than they are nowadays, pessimists say. The whole world will experience a period of economic depression. Many large corporations will be wiped out, and millions of jobs will be lost. The security of the earth will be threatened by terrorism as terrorist groups will become more powerful and more dangerous. On the contrary, optimists believe that life will be far better than it is today. We will be living in a much cleaner environment, breathing fresher air and eating healthier foods. We will also be better looked after by a more modern medical system. Domestic chores will no longer be a burden thanks to the inventions of labor-saving devices. For better or worse, it is certain that in the future some things will be very different. Developments in microtechnology, computers, and telecommunication are bound to have a huge influence on various aspects of our lives. Take work, for instance. Robots will do most of the work in factories, so they will be cleaner places for fewer people to work in them. Offices, too, will go electronic with the result that paper will almost completely disappear. More people will work from home on computers linked to a head office. As for travel, it is likely that space shuttle technology will be used in normal air travel, achieving speeds of up to 15,000 kilometers per hour. Cars will still be with us, but instead of petrol, they will run on anything from electricity to methane gas. They will also be fitted with computers to tell us how efficiently we are driving and if there is anything wrong on the road ahead. Whatever we expect from the future, remember that progress has never moved in straight lines, and history is full of unexpected developments. However, we are confident that the future is in our hands, and it is our responsibility to contribute to bettering our
Part
own
C.
lives.
Listening. Page 88. Listen and repeat.
Incredible. Fatal. Centenarian. Eradicated. Life expectancy.
Listen
Eternal
to the
life.
interview about people's life expectancy in the future and do the tasks that follow. Task 1. Decide whether the following statements are true.
Dr.
Or
Davis,
false.
a Dutch biologist, is being interviewed about people's life expectancy in the future. Many scientists predict that in the 21st century, people will be living into the incredible age of 130. What do you think about this?
Well, I quite agree with them. They have reasons to be confident about that.
What are the reasons?
In fact, their prediction is based on research and on the fact that the centenarian population is mushrooming as our general health improves.
Can you explain this further?
A century ago, average life expectancy in Europe was 45. Today, providing we look after ourselves, eat more healthily, cut down on things like butter, alcohol, and cigarettes, we can add nearly 35 years to that figure.
So these are the factors that help people live longer?
Yes, but the most important factor is the development in medical science.
What do you mean?
Nobody dies from old age, just from diseases that affect people when they get older.
So scientists are trying to find cures for fatal diseases like cancer and AIDS?
Right. Nowadays, about 50% of cancers are curable, and I really believe that within 30 years, this will increase to 80%. And in 10 years' time, AIDS will also be brought under control too.
That sounds interesting. What about living forever?
So far, eternal life is just science fiction. But with the advance of science, it's not impossible. Listen again and answer the questions about the interview. Language focus. Page 90. Pronunciation. Read the following phrases. Pay attention to how the full and contracted forms of the auxiliaries are pronounced.
I have. I've. You have. You've. He has. He's. She has. She's. It has. It's. I have not. I haven't. You have not. You haven't. He has not. He hasn't. She has not. She hasn't. It has not. It
Practice
hasn't.
reading these sentences.
I've got something for you. You've got something for me? We've failed and they've passed. I haven't always lived in this cottage, you know. Haven't you? You've not been here long, of course. I haven't, but I've grown to love it already. He's left, and she's gone to work too. Hasn't the doctor come yet? No, the doctor hasn't been
Test
called.
yourself C. Page 93. Listening. Listen to a passage making predictions about the second half of the 21st century. Choose the best answer from the options A, B, or C.
The following are predictions about the second half of the 21st century. The world's population will increase from the present 6 billion to 10 billion. Most of this increase will be in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The Earth's climate will become warmer. This will create major problems for agriculture, and we will see droughts and famine in Africa. We will even see these problems in southern Europe. Attempts to produce an electric vehicle will fail, and we'll continue to use our normal cars. In the second half of the 21st century, however, the world's supplies of petroleum will run out. With new technology, People won't need to be in the same place to communicate easily. They'll be able to stay at home and do everything by computer and video phone. Patterns of work may change. People might decide they don't actually need to go to banks, offices, schools, universities, or shops anymore.
Unit 9, Deserts. Part A, Reading, page 96.
3 great stretches of sandy desert almost circle the center of Australia. To the north of Nullarbor Plain stretches the Great Victoria Desert. In the west, the Gibbon, Great Sandy, and Tanami deserts comprise an enormous sandy area. North of Lake Eyre lies the Simpson Desert, the last part of Australia to be explored. The Simpson Desert lies between Lake Eyre in the south, the MacDonnell Ranges in the north, the Mulligan and the Diamantina rivers in the east, and the Macumba and Fink rivers in the west. The first European entered the Simpson Desert in 1845. But the desert remained a mystery until Madigan made an aerial survey in 1929. He named the desert after Simpson, president of the South Australian branch of the Royal Geographical Society of Australia. In 1936, Coulson and an Australian Aborigine took camels across the desert. They travelled along the border of South Australia and the Northern Territory. 3 years later, Madigan led a scientific expedition across the sand dunes on a more northerly route. Coulson and Madigan both travelled eastward across the Simpson Desert. In the Simpson Desert, there are different types of dunes. In the western part of the desert, there is a network of short dunes, mostly less than 10 meters high. Hummock grasses grow in loose sand on the crest, and spinifex grows in the corridors between dunes and on the more stable slopes. In the northern part of the desert, the dunes are parallel and separated by corridors of low, open shrubland. Spinifex grows on the slopes of the dunes. These dunes are deep red-brown, but the sand is pale in the area where Queensland, South Australia, and Northern Territory meet. Dry salt lakes up to 70 kilometers long and 15 kilometers wide lie between long dunes with crests 20 meters high.
Unit 10, Endangered Species. Part A, Reading, page 106. Endangered species are plant and animal species which are in danger of extinction. Over 8,300 plant species and 7,200 animal species around the globe are threatened with extinction, and many thousands more become extinct each year before biologists can identify them. The primary causes of species extinction are habitat destruction, commercial exploitation, and pollution. The drainage of wetlands, cutting of forests, urbanization, and road and dam construction have destroyed or seriously damaged natural habitats. Since the 1600s, worldwide commercial exploitation of animals for food and other products has seriously reduced the number of rare species. Toxic chemicals in the air and land, contaminated water, and increased water temperatures have also driven many species to the verge of extinction. Plant and animal extinction leads to a loss of biodiversity. Maintaining biodiversity is important for us in many ways. For example, humans depend on species diversity to have food, clean air and water, and fertile soil for agriculture. In addition, we benefit greatly from the many medicines and other products that biodiversity provides. Different conservation efforts have been made in order to save endangered species. The Red List, a global list of endangered and vulnerable animal species, has been introduced to raise people's awareness of conservation needs. Governments have enacted laws to protect wildlife from commercial trade and overhunting. A number of wildlife habitat reserves have been established so that a wide range of endangered species can have a chance to survive and develop. Part C. Listening. Page 111. Listen and repeat.
Gorilla, bared teeth, sociable, silverback, subadult, Civil War, nest, forest
Task
rangers.
1. Listen to the passage and choose the best answer, A, B, C, or D, to
For a
each
long
question.
time, the image most people had of a gorilla was a dangerous-looking animal with big, bared teeth. But researchers studying gorillas show a very different picture of mountain gorillas. The animals are peaceful, gentle, sociable, and mainly plant-eating creatures. Gorillas live in family groups. A typical group is led by the biggest and strongest grown-up male gorilla. He is called a silverback because the hair on a man's back turns from black to silvery gray as he grows up. A silverback's group usually includes 1 or 2 subadult males and a few females and their young. Mountain gorillas spend much of their time eating. Their food includes a variety of plants, along with a few kinds of insects and worms. At night, the animals make a nest to sleep in. Many lightweight gorillas nest in trees. The heavier ones may nest in grasses on the ground. Babies sleep with their mothers at night. Life for mountain gorillas is not always peaceful. They are endangered and threatened by civil wars in the smaller parts of Africa. Hunters kill them for food. Their forests are cut down for farmland, fuel, and housing. But many scientists, forest rangers, and other concerned people are working hard to protect mountain gorillas and their habitats.
Task 2. Listen again and complete
Part
the
E.
chart below. Language focus. Page 114. Pronunciation. Practice reading the following sentences, paying attention to the stressed syllables. 1. Tell me the time. 2. Show me the way. 3. He bought some carrots and cabbages. 4. Come for a swim. 5. Look at the clock on the mantelpiece. 6. I think he wants to go tomorrow. 7. It's not the one I want. 8. Most of them have arrived on the bus. 9. Walk down the path to the end of the canal. 10. I'm going home today for Christmas. 11. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. 12. If you don't have the best, make the best of what you have. Test yourself D. Page 116. Listening. Listen to the passage and complete the note with no more than 3 words.
High in dense bamboo forests in the misty mountains of southwestern China lives one of the world's rarest mammals, the panda. Pandas feed mainly on bamboo shoots and leaves. Occasionally, they eat other plants, fish, or small animals. Pandas eat fast and they eat a lot. They spend about 12 hours a day doing it. Pandas are in extreme danger today. There are only about 600 of these black and white bears in the wild and 100 in captivity. One of the reasons is that the survival rate of the cubs is very low. More than half of them die shortly after birth. The Chinese government is considering cloning the panda in their efforts to save this animal.
Unit 11. Books. Part A. Reading. Page 118.
On the subject of reading, Francis Bacon, who lived at about the same time as Shakespeare, wrote these words: "Some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested." This good advice shows how it is possible to read different types of books in different ways. For example, you might pick up a travel book and read a few pages before going to sleep. It is enough to dip into it and read bits here and there. In a word, this is tasting. Some stories are for swallowing. Imagine that you have found a good story and, what is even more important, the time to enjoy it. You might be on holiday or on a long train journey. If it is a good book, you might say, "It's so good I can't put it down." But not all stories belong to this class. Reviewers sometimes describe books as hard to put down or hard to pick up again. Other books are for reading slowly and carefully. If it is a book on a subject that you are interested in, you will want to chew and digest it. That does not mean reading it too slowly. When you pick up a book for the first time, check that it is not too difficult. Do not start a book unless you can see from the first few pages that it is one you can easily read and understand. Some people think that as more and more people have television in their homes, fewer and fewer people will buy books to read. Why read when television can bring you all the information and stories with color picture and action? But in fact, television has not killed reading. Today, more books of every kind are sold than ever before. Books are still a cheap way to get information and entertainment, and you can keep a book forever and read it many times. Books in the home are a wonderful source of knowledge and pleasure.
Part C. Listening. Page 123. Listen and repeat. Incredible. Journey. Wilderness. Personality. Fascinating. Survive. unnoticed. Listen to a woman talking about the book that she has just read, and do the tasks that follow. Task 1. Circle the correct answer, A, B,
I recently
or C.
read The Incredible Journey by Sheila Burnford, a book about 3 animal friends who travel across the Canadian wilderness looking for their owners. It is a fascinating story that describes some of the incredible things animals can do. When a Canadian family goes to England for a long trip, they leave their 3 pets with a friend who lives 300 miles away. Though well treated by the friend, the pets miss their family. One day, they are able to leave the friend's house unnoticed and begin the long journey to find their owners. The central theme of the book, a problem the animals must resolve, is how to survive life in the wilderness in order to arrive home. They never could have completed the journey alone, but they take care of one another, and all the 3 make it and are reunited with their owners. Each animal has a distinct personality, but they care for one another almost as if they were a family. The most impressive of them is the old dog. The journey was the most difficult for him, but amazingly he found the strength to make it. The author didn't try to turn the animals into people, speaking and acting like humans. Instead, she was faithful to her characters as animals and showed us their journey through animal eyes. That made the book interesting and unbelievable. I would recommend the book to anyone who likes animals. I think that anyone who has ever had a pet or wanted one would enjoy it.
Task 2. Listen again and fill in the gaps in the passage.
Each animal has a distinct personality, but they care for one another almost as if they were a family. The most impressive of them is the old dog. The journey was the most difficult for him, but amazingly he found the strength to make it. The author didn't try to turn the animals into people, speaking and acting like humans. Instead, she was faithful to her characters as animals and showed us their journey through animal eyes. That made the book interesting and believable. That made the book interesting and unbelievable. I would recommend the book to anyone who likes animals. I think that anyone who has ever had a pet or wanted one would enjoy it.
Part E. Language Focus. Page 126. Pronunciation. Listen and practice reading the following sentences, paying attention to the stressed syllables. 1. Why did you behave like that? 2. Come for a swim. 3. I think it will be fine. 4. She's gone for a walk in the park. 5. I wonder if he'll ever come back. Mark the primary stress over the main stress syllables. Then practice reading the sentences. Peter's coming in a minute, if he can. Come and see us at our new apartment. Where's your new apartment? Is it in another district? Why was he trying to embarrass me? Probably he wanted you to notice him. Unit 12. Water Sports. Part A. Reading. Page 128. Water polo is played in a pool 1.8 meters deep, 30 meters long, and 20 meters wide, with a goal 3 meters high and at least 0.9 meters above the water. The goal is marked by vertical posts, a crossbar, and a net. There are 7 players per team, 6 swimmers, and a goalie. The home team wears white caps, the visiting team blue ones, and the goalies wear red caps with the number 1 in white. Like football, the game begins with the ball in the center of the pool, and both teams sprint for it from their own goal lines. The ball can be advanced by passing with one hand or swimming with the head above the water and the ball between the arms, so it rides on the wave created by the swimmer's head. No player except the goalie can hold the ball with both hands. Defensive players are not allowed to interfere with the opponent's movements unless the player is holding the ball. Major fouls are penalized by 1 minute in the penalty box, and a player is ejected after committing 5 personal fouls. For minor fouls, such as holding or punching the ball, a free throw is awarded from the spot of the foul. At least 2 players must touch the ball after a free throw before a goal can be scored. A game is divided into quarters, ranging from 5 to 8 minutes in length. After a tie, there are 2 overtime periods of 3 minutes each. If the game is still tied after the overtime periods, 2 teams continue to play 3-minute overtime until the referee's decision is made. Part C. Listening. Page 132. Listen and repeat.
Synchronized swimming. Annette Kellerman. Catherine Curtis. Chicago Teachers College. Wright Junior College. Amateur Athletic
Task
Union.
1. Listen to a woman talking about synchronized swimming and circle the most appropriate option, A, B, or C, to complete each of the following sentences.
Synchronized swimming. The great Australian swimmer, Annette Kellerman, student at the University of Wisconsin, planted the first seed of what was to become synchronized swimming when she performed a water ballet in a glass tank in New York in 1907. Catherine Curtis, an American woman, was very inspired by the new water sport. So she tried to get synchronized swimming added to the physical education program for female students. In 1923, she founded a water ballet club at the University of Chicago, and 60 swimmers of the club attracted national and international publicity. The sport quickly became popular among young women in Chicago. Curtis developed the competition rules, based essentially on the scoring methods used in gymnastics and diving. The first recorded competition was held on May 27, 1939, between Chicago's Teachers College, coached by Curtis, and Wright Junior College of Illinois. Shortly afterwards, the Central Association of the Amateur Athletic Union, AAU, staged the first multi-team competition on March 1, 1940. The following year, the AAU officially accepted synchronized swimming as a competitive sport for team events. In 1946, the first formal national championships were conducted by the AAU. Synchronized swimming became an Olympic event at the Los Angeles Games in 1984.
Task 2. Listen again and answer
Part
the question. Language focus. Page 135. Pronunciation. Listen and repeat. Grandmother. Handsome. Castle. Postman. Family. Garden. Awful. Interest. History. Edinburgh. Practice reading these sentences. 1. My grandmother is very interested in history. 2. There are a lot of old castles in Edinburgh. 3. I saw a handsome postman entering the garden. 4. My family paid a visit to that castle 2 years ago. 5. The meal was awful this evening. Unit 13. The 22nd Sea Games. Part A. Reading. Page 138.
The 22nd Southeast Asian Games were held in Vietnam from the 5th to the 13th of December 2003. Although it was the first time Vietnam hosted such a big sports event, the Games were a great success. The Games really became a festival that impressed sports enthusiasts with its spirit, solidarity, cooperation for peace and development. Athletes from 11 participating countries competed in 32 sports, and 444 gold medals were won. Some teams, such as table tennis, badminton, karate-do, volleyball, basketball, and wrestling, were composed of top competitors in the region. Many games records were close to international levels. Vietnam won 158 gold medals to finish at the top of the Southeast Asian Games medal standings. Thailand was ranked second with 90 golds, and Indonesia was third with only 55 golds. Singapore and Vietnam were the two nations which had participants who presented the most outstanding athlete titles in the swimming and shooting events. The Vietnamese women's football team successfully defended the SEA Games title. The men's football team won a silver medal. In other sports, such as karate-do, athletics, bodybuilding, and wushu, the young and energetic Vietnamese athletes performed excellently and won a lot of gold medals. Vietnam's first-place finish was not surprising. Firstly, to prepare for the 22nd SEA Games, Vietnam carried out an extensive program for its athletes, which included training in facilities both home and abroad. Secondly, with the strong support of their countrymen, the Vietnamese athletes competed in high spirits. The country's success has proved that Vietnam can organize sporting events on an international level. A plan has been proposed for Vietnam to host the Asia Sports Games at some point in the
Part
future.
C. Listening. Page 142. Listen and repeat.
Odd, tempting, deal, proposal, milkmaid, clear, employee.
Task
Podium.
1. Listen to the first newspaper article about Amnat, the winner in the 22nd Southeast Asian Games pole vaulting competition, and answer the questions.
The first newspaper article. Only Amnat won a gold in the Southeast Asian Games pole vaulting yesterday. Nobody else could clear the bar. While he was the only one who stood alone on the podium, Amnat was among the Thai athletes who won 10 gold medals in early events yesterday. He won the gold in pole vaulting final, after clearing 4.80 meters. Meanwhile, 4 other pole vaulters missed their attempts at the heights ranging from 4.40 meters to 4.80 meters. Amnat has proved a lonely winner in this event, but his points were still below the SEA Games record of 5.05
Task
meters.
2. Listen to the second newspaper article about the players of Vietnam's women's football team and decide whether the statements are true or false.
The second newspaper article. The Vietnamese milk company, Vinamilk, has offered jobs to the 27 members of Vietnam's women's football team after they won the game's second title. Perhaps they are going to be milkmaids when they retire. It is not an odd proposal because the majority of the footballers will become unemployed when the games are over, and they will have to struggle to make ends meet. Vinamilk has promised to train their new employees as soon as the deal is signed. The goalkeeper of Vietnam's women's football team is dreaming of running a cafe after doctors have said her injuries would stop her from playing ever again. At the moment, she is short of money, so the Vinamilk offer looks tempting to her.
Part E. Language Focus. Page 145. Pronunciation. Practice reading these sentences. Make sure you link the words together as shown.
1. Look at these pictures. 2. The plane took off despite the fog. 3. Mrs. Brown's quite old. 4. She's from Australia. 5. She has many friends in London. 6. It's upstairs. 7. Tom used to live here. 8. Put on your helmet, please. 9. I want to move into a new flat with some friends. 10. Don't forget to turn off the lights.
Test yourself E. Page 148. Listening. Listen to the text and write down the missing word or number. The first one has been done as an example.
Today, we think of a book as a volume of many sheets of paper containing text, illustrations, photographs, etc. Because of their durability and portability, the main uses of books are to preserve and distribute information. In ancient times, people wrote on clay tablets, wood or bamboo tablets tied with cord, or book rolls to store information. Later, with the invention of paper, the Chinese had the first book called Jingangjing, the Diamond Sutra, printed in 868 AD. In the 20th century, despite the challenge from other media such as radio or television and computer, books continued to be a primary means for the dissemination of knowledge, for instruction and pleasure in skills and arts, and for the storage of humans' experience.
Unit 14. International Organizations. Part A. Reading. Page 152.
The Red Cross is an international humanitarian agency. In times of war, it is dedicated to reducing the sufferings of wounded soldiers, civilians, and prisoners of war. In time of peace, it gives medical aid and other help to victims of major disasters such as floods, earthquakes, epidemics, and famines. The initiative for founding the Red Cross came from a Swiss man called Jean-Henri Dunant. Appalled by the almost complete lack of care for wounded soldiers, he appealed to the leaders of nations to found societies devoted to the aid of the wounded in wartime. A conference was held in Geneva in 1864, and official delegates of 12 nations signed the first Geneva Convention, laying down the rules for the treatment and protection of the wounded and the disaster-stricken. It was also at this meeting that the famous symbol of the organization, the white flag bearing a red cross, was adopted. It was Henry Davison, president of the American Red Cross War Committee, who proposed forming a federation of these national societies. An international medical conference initiated by Davison resulted in the birth of the League of Red Cross Societies in 1991. In November 1991, it became the International Federation of Red Cross. The Federation's mission is to improve the lives of vulnerable people who are victims of natural disasters, poverty, and health emergencies. The International Red Cross has its headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. Today, the total number of national Red Cross societies from all over the world has mounted to 186. So help and support are able to be rapidly sent to wherever there are victims of catastrophe, for example, to the victims of Asian tsunami in 2004. Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies in the countries hit by the tsunami reacted without hesitation to help those struggling to survive, despite the fact that many staff and volunteers had lost families, friends, colleagues, and livelihoods. For example, the Indonesian Red Cross headquarters in Banda Aceh was washed away, but a temporary office was in place within hours, and the injured were being helped.
Part C. Listening. Page 156. Listen and repeat.
Destruction. International. Organization. Colonies. Independence. United
Task 1.
Nations.
Listen to the first part of the passage and circle the best answer, A, B, C, or D, to the following questions.
In 1945, leaders from 51 countries met in San Francisco, California, and organized the United Nations, often called the UN. World War II had just ended. Millions of people had died, and there was destruction everywhere. People hoped they could build a future of world peace through this new organization. The United Nations has 4 main goals and purposes. 1. To work together for international peace and to solve international problems. 2. To develop friendly relations among nations. 3. To work together for human rights for everyone of all races, religions, languages, and of both sexes. 4. To build a center where nations can work together for these goals.
Task 2. Listen to the second part of the passage and fill in the missing words.
Today, almost every country in the world is a member of the UN. Each country has signed an agreement that says, all members are equal. All members promise to solve international problems in a peaceful way. No member will use force against another member. All members will help the UN in its actions. The UN will not try to solve problems within countries except to enforce international peace. Obviously, the United Nations has not been completely successful in its goals. There have been several wars since 1945. However, the organization has helped bring peace to some countries that were at war. It has helped people who left their countries because of wars. It has helped bring independence to colonies.
Part E. Language Focus. Page 159. Intonation. Practice reading the following sentences with the falling tone. 1. The World Wildlife Fund was established in 1961. 2. A small country is equal to a large country in the UN. 3. What does WHO stand for? 4. How many goals are set by the UN? 5. What do you think of this situation? 6. Don't go away. 7. Come in and sit down. 8. Hurry up, it's late. Unit 15. Women in Society. Part A. Reading. Page 162.
Throughout much of the history of human civilization, deep-seated cultural beliefs allowed women only limited roles in society. Many people believed that women's natural roles were as mothers and wives. These people considered women to be better suited for childbearing and homemaking rather than involvement in the public life of business or politics. Widespread doubt about women's intellectual ability led most societies to deny education, employment, and many legal and political rights to women. It was men who controlled most positions of employment and power in society. The struggle for women's rights, the rights that establish the same social, economic, and political status for women as for men, began in the 18th century during a period known as the Age of Enlightenment. During this period, political philosophers in Europe began to argue that all individuals, male or female, were born with natural rights that made them free and equal. These pioneer thinkers advocated that women should not be discriminated against on the basis of their sex. Today, although their status varies in different countries, women in most parts of the world have gained significant legal rights. The most important of these are the right to have equal work opportunities and pay to men, the right to vote, and the right to formal
C.
education.
Listening. Page 167. Listen and repeat.
Saying, 2/3. Hold up, 3/4. Agricultural, Africa. Firewood,
Task 1.
respect.
Listen to the passage and choose the best answer, A, B, or C, to complete each
Women
sentence.
hold up half the sky. This is an old Chinese saying. However, research shows that perhaps women do more than their share of holding up the sky. 50% of the world's population are women, but nearly 2/3 of all working hours are done by women. They do most of the domestic work like cooking and washing clothes. Millions also work outside of the home. Women hold 40% of all the world's jobs. For this work, they earn only 40 to 60% as much as men, and of course they earn nothing for their domestic work. In developing countries, where 3/4 of the world's population lives, women produce more than half of the food. In Africa, 80% of all agricultural work is done by women. In parts of Africa, this is a typical day for a village woman. At 4:45 a.m. she gets up, washes, and eats. It takes her half an hour to walk to the fields, and she works there until 3 o'clock p.m. She collects firewood until 4 o'clock p.m., then comes back home. She spends the next hour and a half preparing food to cook. Then she collects water for another hour. From 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. she cooks. After dinner, she spends an hour washing the dishes. She then goes to bed at 9:30 p.m.